We spoke many times, when you do an act, the act has innate value. Talk about a mitzvah. But besides the innate value, in laws of damages, monetary laws, we speak about a person is a damager, you're liable for the damage you caused. What about causality? What about the ramifications of that damage? A person goes and undermines a company, and you cause a tremendous financial loss. And because of that, the company has to close down. The employees lose their livelihood. Endless families suffer. The person who brought about that tragedy and all the pain and suffering is the only accountable for causing the company to shut down, or all the ramifications and the effects, although it's causality, he's held accountable. We're going to see from the Midrash and from the Talmud that the liability in God's eyes is not only for the immediate loss that he caused, but all the ramifications of that act, he's held fully accountable. Okay? So now he quotes a Midrash. He quotes the Midrash cites a verse in Mishlei, in Proverbs. Mal ve'Hashem chonin dal, ugemulo shishalimlo. When a person lends a poor person money, you do an act of kindness. You know who's considered the debtor? Excuse me. Aaron, ani b'emtza shiur achshav. Hello? So when you lend a poor man money, even as much as a cent, and that cent was so crucial and necessary that he should be able to buy a piece of bread, which gave him his life. So when God repays you that debt, God is the debtor. Does he pay you a penny? Or does he repay you in terms of what that penny brought about? Since that penny availed the food which gave that poor man life, and not only did he give him life, because of this, he was able to continue living, having a family, affecting other people positively. All the ramifications of that penny, you're fully credited for anything that penny brought about. Could you imagine? You know what kind of investment, what kind of return on investment is? All you gave the poor man a piece of bread. Even as a loan. Not even as charity, but it's chesed. And the poor man didn't want to take charity. He took it as a loan. He says, I'll pay you back. And because of that, and he speaks about a person who ran a company and needed a loan to prevent bankruptcy. And he was able to continue. And because of that, the employees kept their positions. The families were supported. They were able to educate their children. And the children, the families could live productive lives. All the outgrowth of that one act that you lent the man the money, that he was able to maintain and retain his employees, and they're all beneficiaries, and they could go on live productive lives. The outgrowth of that original loan accrues to that man who offered that, who did the initial act of chesed. Could you imagine? Where do we know this from? He cites, the Talmud writes that King Saul had very serious liability. What was his liability? There was a community called Nov, the city of Kohanim. King David was a fugitive. His father, King Saul, believed that David was out to undermine his kingdom. And therefore he became a fugitive. And him and his men fled, his band of men, and they were dying of hunger. They had nothing to eat. So there was a city called Nov, the city of Kohanim. They sought refuge there. And they themselves gave them bread and wine, and restored them, that they didn't die of hunger. When King Shaul found out about this, he gave the order that the community should be destroyed. All the members of the community were killed. Listen to this. So that's enough to be, he had very serious liability for this. Innocent people were slaughtered because he believed that David was out, they harbored a criminal, the fugitive. Now, we read a story at the time of Joshua. There was a nation, they were called Gibeonites. When the Jews went into Canaan, the order was given, we had to annihilate the nations of Canaan. This community, you know what they did? They went and they put on the disguise. They had moldy bread, and their shoes were worn out. And they had said they'd come from a far-off location, and they want to be embraced by the Jewish people. And they presented themselves as if they're not from the 7 nations of Canaan. But factually, they were. And Joshua entered into a covenant with them that he will accept them and he will not harm them. Later, it was revealed that they duped him. But because he entered into a covenant and made an oath that he would not destroy them, he wasn't able to destroy them. What he did was he designated them that they should be water carriers and they should be wood choppers, supplying wood for firewood. That was their livelihood, and they were limited to that vocation. They couldn't enter into any other area of commerce. Water carriers and providers of firewood. The main significant part of the livelihood of these Givonim was the city of Novir Kohanim. That was their lifeline, because they serviced that community. When the city of Nov Kohanim was destroyed, what happened? The Gibeonites didn't have a livelihood. And as a result of that, you know what happened to the Gibeonites? Many of them suffered and many of them died because they had no means of support. And the verse says, King Saul is liable for killing the Gibeonites. What do you mean kill the Gibeonites? He gave the order to kill the Nov community because they harbored a fugitive. Through causality, the Gibeonites no longer had people to service, to provide water and firewood. As a result of, they perished. But the pasuk, the verse which is cited, is King Saul killed them. So from here we see that God's justice is that even if a person is not directly involved in taking the life, even through causality, if you're the cause, why? There's accountability. To the point God says, you've taken their lives, and therefore you will die for this. The Talmud tells us that when God punishes, it's maximum up to 4 generations. But when God rewards for doing good deed, it's up to 1,000 generations. 1,000. So if a negative act has staying power for 4 generations, a good act is 2,000 generations. So a good deed, the value is 500 times a misdeed. You know what the Talmud says? If one does something negative, its staying power is maximum 4 generations. You do a mitzvah, it's 2,000 generations. That means a mitzvah has 500 times the value of doing something negative. So if a person does chesed, and you affect people positively, as I gave you the example, you provide the cent for the poor man and you save his life. He's able to have a family. He's able to affect people positively throughout his life. All that accrues to you. Because if you wouldn't have given that poor man initially that morsel of bread to eat, he would have died. So why is he alive? Why does he have a family? Why are his children able to be who they are? Because initially that initial chesed allowed the father to live. And all the good this family does, all that good accrues to that original person who set this dynamic in motion. Not only Does it go to you? You're credited 500 times the value because you did a good deed. Could you imagine? It's not even computable. What an act of chesed, it's not computable. So let's say you have a person, and because of his circumstance in life, he's depressed, and he needs a good word to give him an optimistic outlook on life. And you give him that good word, that kind word, and you lift his spirits. And because of this, the family dynamic becomes different dynamic. And he's able to get a job. Of course, in that melancholy state of mind, he's not employable. Can't employ such a man. And now he is employable. And now he earns a living. And it's only due because you went and you helped him out and you gave him that sense of value. You gave him that level of encouragement. What is the value of that? Well, it took me 5 minutes. You know what that 5 minutes is? It's not a quantitative evaluation. It's qualitative. It's what you did for the person. And because what you did has all these ramifications, the present and many levels down the line does make a difference. As long as you could trace it to its source, you're held worthy and accredited for all that. You know, many years ago, there was somebody who had a program in Lakewood. It was called Ma'or. Ma'or means like enlightenment. What was the program? He had funding this person. He would go, and in the summertime, where people had, during the vacation time, they would attend like seminars that eventually, when they would choose to leave Lakewood and they go to some community somewhere, they'd be taught how to do outreach. Because they'd go to a community that wasn't much Torah, and they would move in these communities, and they would offer their services, studying with people, speaking to people, enhancing the spirituality community. Now, how do you go about doing it? So I was asked a number of times to go in the summer, and I'd drive down to Lakewood. I'd spend about 3-4 hours speaking to about 30 young marrieds, because in a few years they were going to move out to go to some kind of community which needed that spiritual effusion, and I would speak to them. And I said something interesting. It's a known fact, I'm going back many years ago, that in the kiruv field, in the field of bringing people back to Judaism, there's a greater burnout rate than in other fields. The question is why? Why are people burnt out when they do kiruv? You know, people, a year, 2 years, 3 years, by the third year, they're burnt out. They have to shift into something else. They become teachers, but kiruv, their career ends. Why? We know for a fact, one doesn't have burnout from success. You have burnout from frustration and from a lack of success, from disappointment. So why in kiruv are people so disappointed? Why do they somehow burn out? So what I said was this. You know, people, when you go into any field, you believe you have a minimum rate of success. And if you succeed, the more you're encouraged to do more. But let's say your understanding of success is one thing, and you fall endlessly below that goalpost, and you're endless miles away from it. And the way you see it, you're not going to achieve it, you're not going to reach it. You know something? You discourage and you say, look, I'm out of here. I'm going to put my eggs in a different basket. My efforts are going to be invested elsewhere. That's burnout. But what about if you see it in a positive? So I said, this is the understanding. What's success in kiruv? What is success? If a Jew does not believe in the 13 tenets of Jewish belief, doesn't believe in the world to come, although he doesn't keep Yom Kippur, he doesn't keep Shabbos, but he believes in the world to come, and he believes in God, and he believes in the authenticity of the written and oral law. He believes in the coming Mashiach. He believes Moshe was the ultimate prophet. Just this, no more than that. Doesn't eat kosher, doesn't keep Yom Kippur, doesn't keep Shabbos. the man has a share in the world to come. But he doesn't put on tefillin. Doesn't make a difference. If you believe in those fundamentals, you have a share in eternity. Your whole purpose of coming to existence has value. So now you're in the Kira field, and you go and you meet this person that initially doesn't believe, doesn't have any relevance to any of that. And through your teachings and through your influence, he embraces these principles, these tenets of belief. That's it. No more. You weren't able to get him to keep Shabbos. You weren't able to get him to be kosher. You couldn't even get him to put a mezuzah on his doorpost. You want to know something? You know what kind of success this is? It's a phenomenal success. You made a difference in this man's life. Until now, he wouldn't have had a share in the world to come. Now he has a share in the world to come. You know what that is? You gave him more than his life. But people, their whole understanding of success is, I want a notch on my belt. Do you know how many people I made observant? He's a fully observant Jew. You know something? That's moving mountains. Very few people are able to move mountains. And if you can move mountains, maybe very rarely in a lifetime. So if a person goes into the Kira field and believes success is 50 Bali Tshuva, 20 Bali Tshuva, fully observant Jews, you know something? It's not happening. And especially it's not happening because all you want is you want to prove your success. You want those notches on your belt. If you do it with that objective, I want notches, so I could show what I was able to accomplish, it's not going to happen. So if it's not going to happen, you believe that's success. If that's the case, you don't even scratch the surface of beginning to succeed. If that's the case, 1, 2, 3 years, you're no longer in the field. You're burnout. That's burnout. Frustration, disappointment, you've come to an end. But if you understand that you gave the man a share in the world to come, and it's attributed to you, so God says, you know what you've done for me? If you wouldn't have done what you've offered this man, he'd be in the boondocks. He would never meet me after he passes away. Now he's with me. His objective of value of life has been accomplished. I thank you endlessly. And what about even more than that? What about he becomes semi-observant? Like the Jews now, they never put tefillin on their lives. In Israel, they're buying thousands of pairs of tefillin for IDF soldiers who never wore tefillin in their lives. People are contributing money. IDF soldiers never wore tzitzis in their lives. They're wearing tzitzis now for the first time in their life because of what happened and seeing miraculously many things happening. And they're open to it. You know what it means to be able to provide a pair of tefillin to a person that never wore tefillin in his life? That's all he's going to do. Put on tefillin with tzitzis. To become observant takes years to do it right. Doesn't make a difference. You've set the trajectory. You've put the man in a good place. And you see the soldiers on the front saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. They never said it in their lives. Although they understand the words, they never said it. Because they didn't value it. Also, now they're valuing it. And people are out there teaching them how to say it. And how to process things. And how to approach things. These people are in the front lines doing this. These are victories. Tremendous victories. You don't need guided missiles to destroy the enemy. The merit of these mitzvahs, God will provide the guided missiles and will take them out, and that will bring about the salvation. That's Jewish perspective. That's the way we have to process things. And that's the way we have to see life. The pain is overwhelming, what happened in Israel, the atrocities. But look what the fruit it produced, despite the pain. The fruit is not fathomable. It's not computable, the value of the return of this pain. Just put it in a positive perspective. Many years ago, there was a volcano in the Philippines. There was a mountain, a volcano was called Mount Manatubo, if you remember. In the Philippines, there was an Air Force base. It was called Clark's Air Force Base. It cost the United States government to build this base $2 billion. In this base in the Philippines, they had B-50 bombers. Before that erupted, that volcano, they had to remove all those jet fighters, the B-50 bombers, 52 bombers, they had to remove them. And they removed them. When this volcano erupted, the base was destroyed. 2 billion destroyed. Many villages, there were mudslides. Hundreds and hundreds of people were killed. It was such a volcano that the ash was shot up into the atmosphere 30,000 feet. That was the power of this volcano. That's how, in terms of the atmosphere, the ash was shot into the atmosphere. And it was tragic. People losing their lives, the financial losses, the mudslides. But they realized afterwards, we're speaking about global warming. Because this ash was shot into the atmosphere, it created a covering that where the sun came in, which caused global warming, was delayed 10 years. On a global level, 10 years global warming was delayed because this ash that was shot into the atmosphere. But it cost $2 billion. It cost a few hundred lives. But on a global level, what's the value? $2 billion. It's negligible. A few thousand lives, a few hundred lives. You got a war to save the world. What's a few hundred lives? So if you look at the end result of what it is and put it in perspective, although there was pain, there was suffering, there was financial loss, but the ultimate gain for humanity was phenomenal. But you have to see it in the broad way like that. But it was only revealed later that that was the end result, that was the value of the eruption of this volcano. We have eruptions in life. We have pain in life. But you have to see, not the fallout, you have to see the positive ramifications of many of these things. Right now, although, thank God, we have as many losses as we had, which are tragic, relative to the losses that, God forbid, we should not have, but the return, Judaism-wise, spiritually speaking, people now considering things they would have never considered in their lives. All the infighting, the hate, all of a sudden, a lot of it just totally dissipated. There's what we call unity, is achdus in Israel, because of this. You know what Hashem says? My children are now getting along with one another. You know what that means to God? It's not to be believed, to understand what that means. That's the way we have to perceive it and understand it. In every black cloud, there's a silver lining. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There's a platinum lining. And the question is it just a veneer or is it more than a veneer? That's the essence. The essence is silver. It's just coated with some black soot on the outside. That's what it is. So the Chofetz Chaim writes here, if a person would appreciate and understand what the innate value of Chesed is and how God marks it and accredits it, a person will be pursuing Chesed unceasingly, because the blessing you will have for your children. And he says something interesting. If you go and give life to a person, the Medrash says, Hashem says, if you ever need healing, if your family ever needs healing, just as you provided life for this poor man, I'll provide life for you and your family. The doctors say it's hopeless. You know, it's interesting. There's the Torah tells us that if a person becomes ill, it's due to divine decree. So how does a doctor have a right to heal the patient? He's meddling in God's affairs. Now, how do you meddle? The Torah says, Rape, that even though a person becomes ill or whatever is compromised health-wise, because it's God's decree, God allows the doctor to intervene to assist the person to recover from that illness. That's what the Torah says. The doctor is permitted. It's not considered going against God's wishes. Okay? It's based on a verse in the Torah. Let's say a doctor says to a patient, you know something, it's hopeless. Just because the doctor says it's hopeless, the doctor is permitted to heal. The doctor's, he could say anything he wants, but he's not the last word whether you live or die. The one who has the last word whether you live or die is God himself. And therefore, as we say here, a person, statistic-wise, the person should outlive. But if he has enough merit because he provided life for others, and the children are thriving and alive and healthy and secure, Hashem says, as you did for him, I will do for you. If God forbid your life is ever in jeopardy, I will annul that decree. If your children are not well, if financially you're bereft or whatever, I'll come in, I'll compensate you. Consider me the debtor. I'm in debt, I'm indebted to you. So if a person understands that, we're not talking about giving mega dollars. I have to give away 50% of my worth to charity. We're not talking about that. You get the tax deduction in either case. If there wouldn't be a tax deduction, people wouldn't even give charity at all. First question, do you have 5103C? That's the first question they ask. And after that, they go and they put you through an interrogation where, you know, something, you believe they somehow belong to the CIA and they were trained how to do interrogations till they give you $1. Other people say, you know something, if you truly need it, I'll give it to you. Worry about the 5103C later. They'll put their hand in the pocket immediately and give you and help you out if you're truly in need. And if you understand its value, you're there before it's even asked because you understand the value of what you're doing.